You've been told for years that if you simply wait long enough, if you stay patient, if you remain endlessly accommodating, she'll come back. This is the great lie of modern dating. The idea that loyalty alone will win someone's respect, that sheer devotion will make them see your worth. It doesn't work that way. If you want women to return to you, stop waiting at the door like a lovesick puppy. Stop performing affection like it's some kind of emotional bribe. You need to act in a way that commands respect, not just affection. When a woman leaves, she's not just walking away from you, she's walking toward a version of herself that she believes is better, freer, more exciting. That's not a personal insult. That's how human beings behave when they think the grass is greener elsewhere. Your job isn't to convince her that she made a mistake. Your job is to become a man who doesn't spend his time begging to be chosen. This means developing a spine, not a cartoonish kind of bravado, not swagger or cheap posturing, but real backbone. It's the quiet, immovable strength of a man who knows who he is, who knows his own value without waiting for anyone else to confirm it. Women are not drawn to desperation, they're drawn to gravity. The kind of presence that says, without a word, I know where I'm going and I won't collapse if you're not walking with me. You don't win someone back by chasing them. You win them back, if at all, by moving forward. Build the kind of life that makes people pause. Improve yourself because your life is worth improving, not because you hope she's watching. Women sense the difference. When a man changes himself as a ploy, it smells of performance. When he changes himself out of genuine self-respect, it's magnetic. This is not about playing games, nor is it about being cold or cruel. It's about refusing to let your sense of worth depend on whether or not one person approves of you. The man who can stand alone, who can walk away when he is not respected, is the man women circle back to, not because he manipulated them, but because strength and self-possession are inherently attractive. So stop asking, how do I make her want me again? And start asking, what kind of man do I want to be, whether she's here or not? The first question makes you weak. The second question makes you formidable. If she comes back, it will be because you've become the kind of man who no longer waits to be rescued by anyone's love. And if she doesn't, you've already rescued yourself. The great delusion fed to men today is that patience and devotion on their own are somehow enough. Be faithful, they say. Be kind. Sit quietly in the corner and prove you're still there when she comes back from wherever she's gone. It's a lie dressed up as virtue, a kind of romantic masochism. If you believe that love is earned by waiting like a loyal dog on the porch, you've misunderstood both love and respect. Women do not return to men who make themselves perpetually available as a consolation prize. They return, if they return at all, to men who refuse to be diminished by someone else's absence. Waiting passively is a slow erosion of your dignity. You tell yourself that loyalty is strength, but what you're really doing is outsourcing your entire sense of worth to her decision. You live in suspension, neither moving forward nor letting go. You imagine that your patience is noble, but to her it looks like stagnation. To a woman, a man who simply waits appears unanchored, as though his entire life depends on whether she changes her mind. There's nothing attractive about a man who builds his world around someone who has already walked out of it. This is not to say that loyalty is worthless. It is to say that loyalty has to be reciprocated to mean anything. If she has left, she has, at least for the moment, withdrawn her loyalty. Continuing to offer yours without conditions is not romantic. It's self-erasure. A man who respects himself does not beg to be chosen. He insists on being met as an equal. He can grieve the loss of a relationship without letting that grief paralyze him. He keeps living, keeps building, keeps moving, because his life was never meant to be paused until one person returns. The culture loves to sell men the story of the patient hero, the man who waits unchanged until his beloved sees the error of her ways. But real life is not a fairy tale, and women are not princesses wandering back to the castle out of gratitude. Human beings are drawn to energy, to momentum, to a sense of forward motion. When you wait passively, you don't look strong. You look like you have nowhere else to go. And if you have nowhere else to go, why should anyone believe you're worth following? This doesn't mean you have to become callous or pretend you don't care. It means you must let your pain transform you instead of immobilize you. Use the loss as fuel, not as an excuse to wallow. Every day you spend obsessing over her return is a day spent ignoring your own life. Build something, learn something, change something. Not because you hope she's keeping score, but because you deserve to live a life that's not dependent on anyone's approval. Ironically, it is when you stop performing for her gaze that you become magnetic again. The man who refuses to wait idly sends a powerful message, even without words. I am not defined by who stays or who goes. I have a direction of my own. That's the kind of man a woman notices, not the one hunched over his phone, praying for a text, but the one too busy living to wait for permission to exist. The first kind of man disappears into someone else's shadow. The second casts his own. You must decide what story you're telling with your behavior. Are you the man marking time, proving your loyalty by your willingness to suffer? Or are you the man who can lose something precious and still refuse to lose himself? The second man, even in heartbreak, commands a certain respect. The first merely inspires pity. And no woman comes back to a man because she pities him. So stop waiting passively. Stop treating your life like an antechamber where you sit until she decides whether you're worth letting back in. You are not an object to be retrieved. You are a man to be met. And if she does return, it should be to find you not where she left you, stagnant, small and desperate, but farther along the road, stronger, sharper, and entirely unwilling to pause your life for anyone again. There's a temptation among men, especially when they feel rejected or overlooked, to try and manufacture strength. They put on a costume of confidence, loud, brash, swaggering, hoping to disguise the hollowness underneath. But women have an unerring instinct for the difference between real backbone and theatrical bravado. You can't fake substance for long. What actually commands respect is not a man pounding his chest, but a man who carries himself with quiet certainty, who knows his own value without having to announce it every 5 minutes. This kind of strength isn't showy. It doesn't need validation, and it certainly doesn't hinge on someone else's approval. It's not the sort of thing you pick up by memorizing a few clever lines or posturing at the bar. Real strength is built in the places no one sees, in the habits you keep, in the promises you make to yourself and keep, even when it would be easier to break them, in the ability to weather loss without falling apart. It's the kind of resilience that makes a man stand up straighter, not because he's trying to impress someone, but because he refuses to fold in on himself. The world is full of men who confuse arrogance for authority. They think that barking orders or flaunting wealth will make people, women especially, respect them. In truth, the louder a man boasts, the more obvious it becomes that he's trying to drown out his own insecurity. A woman may play along with the performance for a time, but she won't feel genuine admiration. What women are drawn to is gravity, the sense that a man is anchored, not tossed about by every passing opinion. Developing true inner strength starts with honesty. You have to stop lying to yourself about how you feel, about what you want, about what you're afraid of. Most men would rather project a tough exterior than admit weakness, but that just traps them in perpetual performance. Paradoxically, the man who acknowledges his fears and still acts with discipline is far stronger than the one who pretends he has none. Strength is not the absence of doubt. It's the ability to move forward despite it. This is why self-respect matters more than any clever strategy to impress women. If you respect yourself, you automatically set boundaries, not because someone told you to, but because you refuse to tolerate treatment that undermines your worth. You're less likely to chase people who devalue you, less likely to contort yourself into someone else's idea of a good man, and far more likely to build a life you're proud of. That kind of man doesn't need to perform confidence. He simply radiates it. The irony is that when you stop trying to prove your strength, people begin to feel it. They notice how you handle setbacks without bitterness, how you remain steady under pressure, how you refuse to compromise your principles even when it costs you. That quiet consistency carries far more weight than any display of macho bravado. Women are attuned to this. They may be briefly dazzled by theatrics, but they trust solidity. They return to the men who are not blown over by rejection, who maintain their composure, whether they are winning or losing. Building this kind of backbone is not glamorous. It happens in the grind of everyday life. It's in how you show up to work, even when no one thanks you, how you keep training your body, even when no one is watching, how you pursue your goals, even when there's no applause. These private acts of discipline create a foundation so solid that when a relationship ends, you don't crumble. You're hurt. Yes, you're human, but you're not broken. And that resilience is what women, and frankly everyone else, find deeply compelling. So forget the cheap imitation of strength. Drop the loud, brutal ego and the endless posturing. Focus instead on cultivating the kind of manhood that doesn't need to be advertised. Be reliable, be disciplined, be the kind of man whose word actually means something. That's the sort of strength no one can take from you. And if she does come back, it won't be because you performed your way into her good graces. It will be because you became a man who commands respect without demanding it. The most dangerous trap a man can fall into after a breakup is living as though his entire life is an audition. Everything becomes a performance for her. Imagined gaze, the gym membership, the new job, the carefully curated social media posts. It's not real change. It's a plea disguised as self-improvement. Women can smell this kind of performance a mile away. When you build your life as bait, rather than as something inherently valuable to you, it rings hollow. The difference between performing and becoming is simple. Intent. If every action you take is calculated to make her notice, you haven't really grown. You're just decorating the same old insecurities with a shinier finish. But if you improve your life because it needs improving, because you deserve better, because you're tired of being stagnant, that growth is genuine and it sticks even if no one claps for it. That's the sort of transformation that commands respect, not just from women, but from everyone who crosses your path. Building your own life means deciding that your time and energy are too valuable to be spent in limbo. It's not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about reorienting your focus. Stop staring at the closed door waiting for it to open again, and start looking at the countless other doors you haven't even tried. What have you been putting off? What parts of yourself have you neglected? The end of a relationship is painful, yes, but it's also a brutal kind of freedom. You get to choose again what to pursue, who to become, where to go next. Women are not drawn to men who orbit endlessly around them. They are drawn to men who have their own center of gravity, their own direction, a man who is genuinely invested in his work, his friendships, his health, and his purpose radiates energy without trying. He's not pretending to be busy to provoke jealousy. He's actually busy because he has things to do. That authenticity is magnetic. When you stop thinking of your life as a stage to win her attention, you start living it for real. And paradoxically, that's when people start noticing. Of course, building your life isn't glamorous at first. It's not the flashy montage you see in films. It's slow, often boring, full of small, uncelebrated victories. It's cooking your own meals instead of ordering takeout every night. It's saving money rather than buying things to look impressive. It's investing time in friendships that aren't transactional. It's reading books that challenge you, taking risks in your career, keeping promises to yourself, even when no one else knows you made them. These are the bricks you lay one by one to build something solid. The irony is that when you start improving yourself for reasons that have nothing to do with her, you become the man she might notice again, not because you chased her, but because you stopped chasing. Women don't long for the man standing still with flowers wilting in his hand. They long for the man who walked on, who became sharper, stronger, more complete, and somehow did it without bitterness. Even if she never comes back, you've gained something infinitely better, a life that isn't waiting for anyone's permission to be lived. There is a quiet dignity in refusing to let heartbreak define you. It doesn't mean you deny the pain. It means you refuse to make the pain your identity. You grieve, you learn, and you get on with the work of building. And as you do, your life begins to reflect something far more powerful than romantic desperation. It reflects competence, focus, and self-respect, qualities that draw people in naturally without a single word of persuasion. So stop crafting yourself into a spectacle designed to win her attention. Start becoming the man whose life is so full, so grounded, that anyone looking in from the outside can see you were never waiting at all. Whether she returns or not becomes irrelevant because you've already moved forward. You're not living to be seen. You're simply living. And that, more than anything, is what makes a man worth noticing. Desperation has a scent. It clings to men who orbit around women like moths around a lamp, burning themselves in the glow of someone else's attention. Women don't have to think hard to spot it. They feel it immediately. The glances that linger too long, the messages that pile up without reply, the constant subtext of please choose me. It doesn't inspire affection. It kills attraction stone dead. What women are drawn to is gravity. A man who holds himself together, who isn't flung into chaos by someone else's departure. Gravity isn't loud. It isn't theatrical. It's not stomping around, declaring that you don't care. True gravity is quiet composure, an unshakable presence that says, I have my own direction, with or without you. When a man has that, people feel it before he even opens his mouth. Desperation is exhausting to be around because it signals neediness. And neediness says one thing very clearly: I have no anchor of my own. If you can't stand on your own 2 feet emotionally, if your mood rises and falls with someone else's opinion of you, you become a burden rather than a partner. No one, not even the most loving woman, wants to carry that weight forever. She might comfort you for a while, but she won't admire you. And admiration is essential to desire. Contrast that with a man who is steady under pressure. He doesn't crumble when someone walks away. He doesn't lash out, and he doesn't beg. He feels the loss, but he remains grounded. That calm strength makes people instinctively trust him, because if he can handle heartbreak without falling apart, he can probably handle other crises too. That's attractive in a way no amount of posturing or smooth talk can never match. Men often think they need to project dominance to appear strong, but dominance without composure is just noise. The kind of presence that truly pulls women in isn't domineering, it's dependable. It's the man who has control over himself, who doesn't react like a weather vane to every gust of attention or rejection. Women return to men who can walk away with dignity, because dignity signals value. If you refuse to collapse for anyone, you show that you believe yourself to be worth something, and that belief is contagious. Cultivating this kind of gravity takes discipline. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely building a life rich enough that one person's absence doesn't unmake you. You can mourn the end of a relationship and still maintain your standards, still show up for your responsibilities, still treat yourself as a man worthy of respect. That steadiness is rare, and rarity is always attractive. Women may be briefly entertained by the man who fawns over them, who never says no, who hangs on every word, but they do not feel deep, lasting desire for him. Desire flows toward the man who could say, I care for you, but I don't need you to survive. That kind of man isn't cold. He's free. He's not holding his breath, waiting for someone to validate his existence. And freedom, especially emotional freedom, is magnetic. If you want to cultivate this presence, you have to train yourself to stop chasing approval, learn to sit with rejection without scrambling to erase it, learn to carry yourself the same way, whether you're being praised or ignored. Stop asking what would impress her and start asking what makes you proud of yourself. That's how you develop the kind of weight that draws people in naturally without any tricks or tactics. When a woman senses gravity in a man, she senses security, not just financial or physical, but emotional. It's the security of knowing he won't unravel at the first sign of trouble, that he can lead himself through difficulty without leaning on her to keep him upright. And even if she never comes back, you've become someone better, a man who can walk through loss with his head high. The truth is, women don't come back to desperation. They come back to strength, real strength, the kind you can't fake, the kind that keeps you grounded when everything else falls away. The question most men ask after heartbreak is always the wrong one. How do I make her want me again? It's the kind of question that traps you in her orbit, as if your entire purpose is to win back her gaze. It frames your life around her approval, and in doing so, it robs you of your own center of gravity. A far better question, the only question that actually matters, is this: what kind of man do I want to be, whether she's here or not? This shift seems small, but it's everything. When you obsess over how to make her want you again, you make her the standard of your worth. You're trying to bend yourself into whatever shape you think might please her. If she prefers softer men, you go soft. If she prefers arrogant men, you try to strut. In doing so, you betray yourself. You become a man with no anchor, constantly adjusting to someone else's preferences. And even if you succeed in luring her back, you'll be trapped performing for her approval forever. That's not love, that's servitude. Asking who you want to be puts the power back where it belongs. It forces you to take your eyes off her and look at yourself with brutal honesty. Do you admire the man you've become? Would you follow him? Would you trust him to lead a family, to make decisions under pressure, to keep his word even when it costs him? These are the questions that matter, and the answers don't depend on whether any particular woman says yes to you. Ironically, when you stop orienting your entire life around female approval, you become more attractive to women. A man with his own standards, his own direction, his own inner compass, radiates something rare, independence. He doesn't posture or grovel. He isn't angry when someone leaves, and he isn't elated just because someone stays. His worth is not on loan from anyone else. That kind of man can be loved deeply because he isn't clinging to love as a lifeline. This perspective also spares you from bitterness. When your goal is to win someone back, every rejection feels like failure, every delay like humiliation. But when your goal is to become a man you respect, even setbacks serve you. Heartbreak becomes a forge rather than a wound. Instead of asking, how can I get her attention? You ask, what lesson is this teaching me? Where do I need to grow stronger, wiser, more disciplined? The pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes purposeful. Building yourself on your own terms requires courage. It means deciding what principles you will live by and refusing to compromise them, even if it costs you relationships in the short term. It means learning skills that make you useful, keeping your body strong, your mind sharp, and your word reliable. Not because someone is watching, but because it's the kind of man you've chosen to be. And here's the quiet truth. When you become that man, you stop worrying about who comes and goes. You're no longer scrambling for validation because you've already validated yourself. A man who orients his life around his own code doesn't have to convince anyone of his value. He doesn't need to explain why he deserves respect. People simply sense it. Women sense it. Most of all, they feel the difference between a man who's desperately asking, what do you want me to be? And a man who calmly says, this is who I am. The first is needy and malleable. The second is solid, and solidity is irresistible. So stop living in reaction to her. Stop building yourself as if she's the audience. Ask harder questions. What kind of work matters to me? What friendships make me better? What habits make me proud? Who am I when no one is watching? When you answer these honestly and live them out consistently, you become a man who doesn't just attract women, you attract respect. Whether she returns or not becomes irrelevant because you've already moved beyond the boy who waits to be chosen. You've become a man who chooses himself first.